How's it going, everyone? I just wanted to post a little update on terms of how's med school going. So we're almost entering our second month now, and it has definitely been quite a ride. It feels like it's been at least 2 years. I think that's kind of the same sentiment you get whenever you're starting something new. And I just kind of wanted to comment also in terms of, how was this med school comparing to my past life as an engineer at UC Berkeley in that undergrad program. And so I know I've spoken about this previously, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about it because I think it's interesting. The big thing with med school is that it's like just a ton of work. And the thing about and what I'm learning about just medicine in general is that it's a huge field, and people know so much information about so many things. Like, take anatomy for instance, where the Greeks and the Romans already kind of beat us all to the punch here, and they've dissected bodies and named muscles and bones and arteries and veins and ligaments and tendons, and all these spaces like the popliteal space or whatever. But like, there's just an insane amount of detail that you need to familiarize yourself with, and not just be familiar with, but also like just straight up memorize, like cold. Because on anatomy practical exams, you're just gonna sit there in front of a cadaver and you're just gonna see this little thing tagged in a cadaver, and that's it. There's no prompt. There's nothing there to help you kind of, if you don't know the landmarks cold in your head, if you don't know the veins and the arteries and the nerves nearby, you're SOL. Like, it's really simple. When I was at UC Berkeley, like, there were some really smart kids in that, like, they didn't have to study that hard and they would still pass because they just had really great analytical minds. Like, they were fantastic at math, and so they knew like which parts of the equation they needed to get to like solve a problem. And I don't have that great of a capacity in that regard. I was more kind of just trying to logic my way through it. But you could still apply logic to these things. But like anatomy, there's no logic here. Like, you either knew and know that when you see some particular landmark, it has to be this structure. Like, there's no question about it. Like, there's no question that the deltoid muscle will always be innervated by the axillary nerve. That's it. Like, and so it's just a bunch of these little yes/no things that's what makes up this whole field. And I will say also that, like, there's a big difference here in terms of the, like with anything you take on, like any new skill or whatever whenever you're learning, there's always going to be like a learning curve to it. Like, there's that first bit where it's just like sucks because you're just like, dude, this is so much stuff I have to learn, and I don't really know if I actually care that much about this and whatever. And I'll say this, like with undergrad, it was different because it felt like, yes, there was that curve, there was that part of like, wow, this is a lot of material to take in, but pretty soon afterwards, like, you're applying a lot of what you're knowing. And I'm not feeling that anywhere near as much as I am in med school. So like, to give an example, literally like within your first or second week at UC Berkeley, like, you're learning about mass balances and mole balances as a chemical engineer, and you're getting problem sets where they're saying like, tell me what this flow rate has to be, tell me what this energy balance is, how much heat am I gonna have to supply this thing, and like, you're really quickly off to the ground running. Like, it's pretty cool, and you're applying the stuff you're learning like that. With anatomy, it really isn't like that. It's like, you gotta invest a ton of time and effort into like this one little area. So you'll focus on like upper extremities, like you'll get into the brachial plexus of the arm, and then you'll move down and you'll see all these nerves and how they branch and come back together and branch again throughout the arm. And it's like, okay, you've memorized all this stuff, but like, what do you do with it? Like, what do you apply it to? And so, you know, there's some people who are like, you know, this does matter because, you know, if you ever are working in an ER and you get a patient who was just shot in the shoulder, you know, you're going to be doing CT scans and you're going to be looking at these things to see if you're seeing these fractures around these specific areas. So, you know, it's really relevant. But like for me, I think and I'm probably bad for saying this, but like, you know, so much of this trivia knowledge, like you can look up, like we have complete anatomy in our iPads, like in 3 seconds you can figure out exactly what the name of this muscle is. Like just it's really kind of, it just seems like pointless work in that sense, because it's like if I wanted to know what the innervation of the pectoralis major is, like I can look it up. You know, and I know that like when you're in a clinical setting and, you know, when you're in the room with a patient, or if you're working in an ER and someone just came in from an ambulance, like you don't have time to look this stuff up. Like you got to just know it. But, you know, if that's not what's in our future, if that's not what we even see ourselves doing, like why is it so important? Another thing I will say is that like there's a huge push to get people to specialize. And so like once you've specialized, like, yeah, then you will become a lot more familiar with these things because you're going to be working with them all day. Like that's all you're going to think about. But it's like year 1 and year 2 of medical school are really just those things where they're all like, you just got to learn everything. You got to get exposed to everything. You got to know all this stuff and the gory details of everything. And the thing that makes it really stressful is that like they will hold you back if you don't get at least 70% on your practical exams. And so anatomy practicals, for instance, like you will walk into that room, you will have 2 minutes at that station where, you know, you're just going to be next to a cadaver and you're going to be staring at some structure that has like this little, you know, number on it and a string, and that's it. You've got your blank piece of paper and you're supposed to write down what you think that is, and you need to get at least 70% of those right. Otherwise, you're gonna have to retake and it's gonna get ugly. So it's scary. There's just this huge stress. Like there's always this fire under your ass to just, you know, keep studying, keep going. And I really don't like it. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it's a way to really, I don't think it's the right mindset you want to put people in, because I know there's a small tangent here, but in terms of like stress versus productivity, if you're working a job that isn't highly physically demanding or mentally demanding, then you do want to have high stress. Like if you worked in a factory where your job was to screw down the lid on a bottle, like, yeah, you do want to have those people stressed out, because if they're just chill, they're just going to work a lot slower and be less productive. And then on the other end of this spectrum is stuff like, you know, brain surgery or something super complicated where you've just got to take so many things into account, like a body mechanic, you know, having to think of all the curves on the car and what kind of heat to apply and where to hit the metal. Like there's other types of work that involve a lot more thought and reasoning and, you know, feeling stuff and really thinking about it. And like in those types of roles, you don't want people really stressed out, because that's how they make mistakes and that's how you can end up with really big problems. And so it's not something where I feel like why are you adding so much stress to kids' lives in a field where there's already a shortage of doctors? Like, why make it even harder to be a doctor in the first place? Why make it so hard to even get into med school? Also a separate conversation. But yeah, you know, I'm not gonna lie, it's frustrating. And fortunately, what I will say is that, like, in terms of me hating anatomy so much, which I do, whatever, that might come back to bite me, but like, at least it's fast, because like not even 2 months have gone by and we've already basically covered all the muscles bones, arteries, tendons, ligaments, you know, on the bones themselves, the specific attachment sites of muscles, like the radial tuberosity for the biceps, whatever. But it's like blew through all that stuff. And, you know, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you just did all this stuff I really don't like, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off. Hopefully it's done and over with fast enough and you can just be like, okay, well, that's great. But yeah, no, so that's kind of like one thing that's giving me a little bit of hope right now, is just this notion that, like, you know, I'm really not a fan of MSK anatomy, muscle, skeletal system, whatever. Like that, it's just really boring memorizing stuff. And the other thing I'll say that's ironic about it is, like, when outside of anatomy we talk about these structures, it's like you'll have learned every single structure in the arm, and then the physicians will say, like, look, you know, there's only a few things there that really matter because these are the ones that commonly break. Like when you're looking at the humerus, typically when it breaks around the surgical neck, and around the surgical neck are these arteries, and these are the ones we care about. So it's just like, why did you make me learn about all these other features of this thing that don't even matter clinically? Like, it's just, it seems like needless stress to put on people. So that's my small rant. I don't want to go on too long about that, but you know, the original purpose of this video was to really just discuss, like, how is it feeling? And a second year student told me this. Second year isn't any easier, and it isn't any less demanding or like intensive a workload. So it's really just the same thing. And in that regard, and this is the thing I wanted to say, is it's just like first year, and from what I'm being told, second year of med school are really just, feels like prison kind of, in that you're sacrificing yourself, you're sacrificing an immense amount of time and money and resources to just be here, to let them control every aspect of your life, in that, like, you are going to be studying. There's always something you should be doing. Like, there's never a time there's something you know, you can just, oh, I'm just gonna conk out and watch a movie for 3 hours and just do what I would normally do before I came to med school. Like, there's just none of that. And because it's just like, there's always just this fire of, like, you know, if it's not anatomy, then it's the clinical medical reasoning class, and you've got a practical for that you've got to be preparing for, or you've got a final coming up, or you've got, like, it's, and I know this is like, you know, you can say, oh, it's like undergrad, but like the difference between this and undergrad is that the pace of this is like at least four times as fast as it was for undergrad. And I'm just speaking from my experience at UC Berkeley, which I think was a fairly intense program. And so, like, that's the thing. Really intense, a lot of stuff. You're always rushing and cramming. And, you know, I mean, I think part of the reason why I'm making these videos is I just want people to know, like, what is this like? I know there's other people who talk about this stuff. I don't know if they speak about it as frankly as I do. But what I will say is that, like, I just wish I knew that, you know, it's a huge sacrifice to put yourself through med school. Like, I think a lot of people think, and mistakenly so, and I'm guilty of this myself, like, you look at a place and you're like, man, if I can just get in there, like, I'm set, it's done, I got it. It's, you know, but the problem is, like, no, that was not even half the battle, was getting that acceptance. Like, you still have to put in the work of doing it. And, you know, attrition is definitely a real thing. Like, people burn out, people get tired, people stop liking what they're doing, and you know, motivation can evaporate very quickly for stuff. And so you know, I'm very interested in listening and getting to know more about other people's motivations for being here and doing this. You know, I wonder about my own motives. And for me, it's good to hear, like, what drives other people. So anyway, other side note, But yeah, I will say unequivocally, med school is way harder than engineering for me. I'm not going to say it's going to be like that for everybody. I'm only speaking about the med school that I'm in. And hopefully, optimistically, it's a nicer experience for other people at other places. But for me, it's been really, really stressful and really, really intense. And I don't know what's keeping me going, but, I think I can actually say like one thing about that is just, why are you in med school? Why, especially like, as I was saying, like you can look up so many of these little trivia factoids that you learn and have to memorize on Google in seconds. Like, in 3 seconds, I can tell you exactly what nerve is innervating my brachioradialis. So why would you pay a bunch of money and time and effort to go through med school? And I think, the main, like, two things here. Number one, the people like you're getting to work with, although I will say that is a diluted version of that with Zoom right now and COVID. It's a Zoom university thing. It's really tough. But number two thing that I was trying to get at was just like, yeah, you could do it on your own. Like you could teach yourself everything you need to know about engineering on your own or whatever. But like, I will speak for myself here and I'll say like, I need a certain amount of structure to get things done. Like I'll need someone to be breathing down my neck and pushing me and saying like, you got to do this and you got to push yourself and make this happen. Even though it's like, I'm like, I hate this. I don't like this. Just stop. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so like, I think med school kind of is that structure and fire under your ass to be like, if you want to do this, if you want to be a physician, like this is what you got to do. And this is the pace you got to work at because this is what the work's going to be. And another final thing I'll say, because I know this is long, is that, in terms of the MCAT, and how much that prepared me, or I don't know, just gave you like an appetizer for what things would be like. I'll say it's actually very, very good at giving you a taste of what medical school will feel like in the short run. Like it's, and what I mean by that is like the preparation or the studying for the MCAT, where, at the time, speaking for myself, like it just seemed like, oh my God, there's so much stuff you gotta know and memorize, and I don't like this. That's really what med school is. It's just like, med school's like studying for the MCAT, but every single day, every single week, every single month for years, like 2 years until you take your boards. And so like, that's really what it is. And it's like, I wish I knew that too. I think that's an important note. But yeah, I'm just trying to hang in there. I'm trying to believe that things are going to get better and more interesting. I'm not like, I will say this about myself. Like, I don't care about making things easier on myself. I don't care. Like, I'll put in work. I enjoy working. I want to be challenged. I don't want to be bored. Like, that's the last thing I want to do is be bored. And so I think that's part of the reason why like I'm in med school in the first place, is just because this is where people like that come. Like, if you didn't want to work ridiculously long hour days, there's tons of other professions and paths you can go down. But yeah, so I'm gonna wrap things up with that. Hopefully I haven't said anything too compromising. Yeah, hope everyone out there is doing well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.